Hello everyone, welcome to Apple Pie, and in today's video we're going to be talking about subject of equations. So what subject of equations is it's how to change around formulas and equations to get them to solve for variables that you want. So this means, if you take the equation here, force equals mass times acceleration, that's used in physics. How to change that around to solve it for acceleration or mass if you know the other two. So it's how to change equations around and have them remain true and solve for different variables. Another example would be working with, the combined gas law. This is kind of complicated. There's 6 different variables here. So it would be how to change that around so that you can more easily extract what information you need from what information you have. So essentially, when we're doing problems with subject of equations, there's only one rule that we have to keep in mind, and that is when you do something to one side of the equal sign, you have to do it to the other. So that means if you divide one side of the equation by x, you have to divide the other by x as well. You have to repeat everything to both sides of the equation, or else your equation will no longer be true when you have it finished. Now, one other thing you should be careful of when you're doing problems with subject of equations or just using equations in general is that your units are the same. So for example, if you're using some gas laws and you're using pressure in them, if you have pressure in atmospheres in one place and in kilopascals in another, your answer is going to be wrong because your variables are different. So to make sure that you know how to convert between variables, I would recommend checking out our video on dimensional analysis. You can figure out how to change units around and have them equal the same thing and how to do it quickly and easily. So let's start off with a pretty simple example. Let's use this equation, force equals mass times acceleration. So right now it's set up to solve for force, but let's say that we want to solve it for acceleration. So as we see right now, on the side of the equal sign that acceleration is on, it's being multiplied by mass. And what we need to do to undo that is divide by mass, because multiplying and dividing by the same thing will leave you with the original answer. So if we divide one side of the equation by mass, we need to do the same thing for the other side. So we have force over mass on the left side, and on the right side we have mass times acceleration divided by mass. So we have essentially just A on the right side because we can cancel those out, and on the left side we have force over mass. So that's our solved equation. Force over mass equals acceleration. So let's try this out with, say, the ideal gas law here. PV equals nRT. So let's say that we want to solve for R. So we see on the side that R is of the equal sign, we have R multiplied by N and multiplied by T. So what we need to do to get R by itself, or R just R on one side of the equal sign, is to get N and T out of that side. So what we can do to undo multiplication, we need to do division. So we will divide this side of the equation by N and T, and because of our only rule, we have to divide the other side by N and T also. So if we finish this problem dividing on both sides, we can cancel out N and T from the right side, so we're left with just R, and on the other side we have PV over NT. And that's how you would solve the ideal gas law for R. You'd have pressure times volume over N times T. So let's now try out our subject of equations with a more complicated equation, like the combined gas law here. So we have two fractions that are set equal to each other. So there's one other kind of trick you can use when you have two fractions that are set equal to each other. So it's called cross multiplying, or the helicopter method by some people. And essentially, if we multiply the numerator and denominator of opposite equations here by the other two, we can set those equal to each other. So here we can get across here that P2 V2 T1 multiplied by each other is equal to P1 V1 T2. And from that, our equation is a bit easier to work with because it's now just multiplication instead of fractional division, which is more complicated a little bit. So at this point, if we are solving for, say, V2, what we can do is look at the two things that it's next to in our equation, which are V2 and T1, and divide, if we're solving for V2, we can divide both sides by P2 and T1 to reduce those from the left side of the equation to get V2 alone, and then our answer is just P1 V1 T2 over P2 T1. Alright, let's try one more example here. Let's use the Pythagorean theorem, a squared plus b squared equals c squared. This is used for determining the relationships of lengths of a right triangle. Let's try to solve this for, say, b. So remember, our only rule is that what we do to one side, we do to the other. So the first thing we should do is subtract a squared from both sides to get a squared out of the left side of our equation. So if we subtract that, we're left with b squared equals c squared minus a squared. And to get a square, to undo the square that's put on b right now, what we need to do is take the square root of b and then take the square root of the other side, and that's as far as we can reduce it. So we're left with b equals the square root of c squared minus a squared. And that's our final answer. Thank you very much for watching this episode of Apple Pie. As always, if you have any questions or comments, something you want to go through again, go ahead and leave that for us in the comment section below in this video. We'll get back to you as soon as we can. Check out our Facebook page, facebook.com/theapplepie, where we put news for our channel. If there's anything new coming out, some changes we're making. Like our videos, subscribe to our channel on YouTube. It means a lot to us when you guys help us out and do that. And thank you very much for watching.